you for your patience while we let folks file in from the waiting room. Hopefully now you should be able to see our presentation, and we really appreciate you joining us for our session of civic engagement and Gen Z, how to meaningfully engage youth in local government. Really appreciate you joining us today. And I would just like to welcome you all. My name is Taylor Buck. I am a program manager with the Institute for Local Government. I provide support in our youth civic engagement, civic education, and workforce pillar. And that's where our webinar falls today. So we're so grateful that we have some fantastic panelists on the line who will chat about their programming and how cities, counties, and special districts can consider their lessons learned. A bit of a tech overview and some housekeeping items for everyone. All webinar participants will be on mute for the duration of the event. If you have any questions, content questions specifically for our panelists, feel free to input those in the Q&A box at any time during the session. We really appreciate you providing any thoughtful questions that you have, and we will do our best to answer all of them. We also welcome any responses in the chat, notifying us of any logistics questions or anything going on that we should be aware of. You should be able to message hosts and panelists, so we'll do our best to monitor that and respond accordingly. And then lastly, since a lot of folks, of course, want to know if a recording and the slides will be available following the event, we will be making a recording of the session as well as the slide deck available to all registrants. So keep an eye out for that after the webinar. It'll be coming through via email in the next couple business days. So to share a bit about the Institute for Local Government, I will launch right into it by talking about our background and our mission. The Institute for Local Government is a nonprofit training and education affiliate of the 3 statewide local government associations, the League of California Cities, the State Association of Counties, and the California Special Districts Association. We provide the really important, practical, and easy to use resources so like local agencies can effectively implement policies on the ground, really thinking about the types of educational resources, events, things that we can support the 2,500 local agencies that we serve statewide. And within this kind of broader scope, we also have some important programs and services. We have 4 pillar areas we call our pillar programs: leadership and governance, civics education and workforce, public engagement, sustainable and resilient communities. And then the services we provide within those, of course, include education and trainings like this webinar, technical assistance and grant writing support, capacity building, and convening. So really providing our facilitation and capacity building expertise to local governments. And all of this is really united under our mission to help local government leaders navigate the complexity they deal with and increase capacity and build trust in their local communities. So transitioning now into what we will be chatting about today for today's agenda. We are well into our welcome portion of the webinar, and we will next go into a polling exercise where we hear a little bit from folks in the Zoom room, understand where you're coming from geographically, but also your agency's level of interest in youth programming. We will then have some really fantastic slide presentations from our youth experts here on the line. First, the Madera Youth Commission, then the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Youth Leadership Academy, the East Bay Municipal Utility District's Youth Career Development Programs, Alameda County's Youth Advisory Board, and then we'll wrap things up with a panel discussion guided by myself, and then an audience Q&A. So we really appreciate your Q&A submissions for that section. So let's now move into a bit of Zoom polling. I really look forward to your responses here. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our poll. Looks like we have the first question up. So on the following scale, number 1, how much does your agency work with youth? If you can take a look at question 1 and submit your response on a scale of we don't work with youth at all, our agency offers some youth programming, our agency offers lots of youth programs, and then lastly, our agency usually engages with youth at public events. If you could let us know kind of where your agency is falling at this moment. For our second question, if your agency does offer youth programming, what is the focus of those programs? If you can give us an idea of the content and kind of what topic areas you cover. And then our next question after that, if your agency does not offer current youth programming, is there interest in starting those programs? So for those of you whose agencies may not quite be offering programs yet, is there any interest? And then rounding things out with our fourth question, for agencies who are interested and have that investment in potentially starting a youth programming, are there any barriers that you're experiencing? And if you could let us know which ones resonate with you. I'll give folks just a couple minutes since we've got a handful of questions there. Really appreciate any responses. Alrighty, I am starting to see responses slow down a little bit. I think Seth might be helping us out with our polling. My colleague Seth here on the line, if we could maybe share the results when you have a moment. Perfect. So for question number 1 about how much your agency works with youth, I'm seeing about a 44% highest rate here on agencies offering some youth programming, and about 27 and 24% respectively on our agency offering lots of youth programs, and then some about just kind of general engagement with youth events. So thank you for sharing that. For number 2, if your agency does offer youth programming, what's the focus? The top 3 votes here are around civic engagement, career development, and recreation. Really helpful for us to know. For our third question about not offering youth programming, for the majority, this question wasn't applicable. So we appreciate you letting us know that most agencies do offer it, and those who may not are interested. And then for agencies who, for our fourth question, who are interested in starting youth programs, some of the barriers that folks are experiencing are majority staff capacity, lack of youth interest, funding, and then also some other concerns. So really appreciate those thoughts there and for everybody participating in that polling. Awesome. All right, so I think we are now ready to move on here. We will now transition to our panel discussion and our slide presentations from today's presenters. I'll go ahead and share the kind of names and affiliations of all of our presenters, but for everyone on the line, you're welcome to share a bit more as part of your presentation. We have Yvette Flores and Johnny Mendez. Yvette is a program coordinator and Johnny is a program manager. Both are coming to us from the Youth Leadership Institute and the Madera Youth Commission. We have Rosie Ramos Gomez, an external relations group manager over at the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We have Kay Tate, a senior human resources analyst over at the East Bay Municipal Utility District. And then rounding out our bench, we have Hannah Moore, Youth Services Program Manager over at the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination at Alameda County. Thank you all so much for joining us today and providing your expertise to our audience. I will now kick things over to Johnny and Yvette. I will be helping facilitate slides here behind the scenes, but folks, I will kick it over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yvette Flores, pronouns she, her, and I work for the Youth Leadership Institute. And pass it over to Johnny to do some introductions.
Hello, everybody. My name is Johnny Mendez. I'm a program manager for the Youth Leadership Institute. Our pronouns are he, him. And well, I'm excited to share a little bit more about the org and how we do work in Madera County. Pass back to you, Yvette.
Yeah, we could go to the next slide. So this first slide has our names and our emails if anyone wants to contact us after this presentation. But just to give a little overview of the Madera Youth Commission, it's an official commission with the city of Madera. So youth get sworn in at an official city council meeting. We work with Madera youth ages from 15 to 21. We also work with youth to grow their leadership in working towards issues that affect youth. And one thing that we do to support the work is we do what we call YAPS training. It stands for Youth Adult Partnership Training. And we do this for all our participants, for our young people, for the adults they work with, for the council members, to ensure that we are intentionally engaging in youth. So that's a little overview of what we do at the commission. I'll toss it over to Johnny for our next slide.
Cool. Yes, a little bit of history about YLI. We have, I think, closer now to 30 years of experience in the state of California with youth development and community work. We have offices across the whole state: San Francisco, Marin, San Mateo, Merced, Madera, Fresno, Long Beach, and Coachella. So we're across the whole state. We've been over 16 years here in the Central Valley. If you're not sure where that is, like right smack dab in the state of California, pretty much. Off of Highway 99. Together across the whole org, we passed over 125 policies. I definitely feel very fortunate to do this kind of work. I've been doing work with wildlife on staff for about 6 years. Total with it, or closer to 10. I used to volunteer with them before that, before I was hired as staff. I absolutely love the organization as well. Yeah, there's a link there. I'm sure you'll have access to that link will give you a glimpse into the policies that were passed over the past 25 years within the work Wildlife has been doing here in California. And so at that, I'll pass it back over to Yvette for our next slide. Actually, this is me. This right here you're looking at is called a youth leadership project cycle. This is a good pacer for us. As you see here, it's a cycle. You see the very top, you see capacity building. All the capacity is there at the very top, and it happens throughout the whole process of our project or campaign, or however long we are working with a specific group of young people. During this process, the main focus really is safety. How can we build safety with the youth that we're working with? I mean, without safety, it's really hard to push work forward. It's really hard to build connections with young people. And it's absolutely foundational to the work that we want to do, when wanting young people to lead work in their communities. After that, we kind of go with them and teach them how to identify issues. We show them how to present, how to collect data using surveys, interviews, focus groups, community forums, or town halls. We got all that data up. We have them with us, like sift through it and see what is usable for us. How can we use this data to push forward their work that they want to do? For example, right now in Madera, along with the Madera Youth Commission, I also help coordinate 2 classes within Madera Unified School District, and our focus this year is culture and culture, inclusion, and representation. So our service district had to do with those topics, and so we go through our data to make sure that the data that we get back is see what kind of story is this data telling us. We then make a plan and how to present this data to the stakeholders and those who have power within the community. For the Youth Commission, it's more along the lines of like approaching City Council and meeting with each one individually and sharing with them our data, and asking one of them to put the policy that the youth want to push forward on an agenda. And then once that happens, the youth will present to the whole City Council to push a policy forward or idea forward and ask for support. Once that is done, we will always evaluate ourselves, the work, were we successful, were we not, how can we improve, and going forward. So again, this is like, a pacer for us. I use this every single year, go out to where it's kind of see where I'm at, where do I need to be. I also share it with our youth. That way they have an idea of where we want to go and where we're at currently. And so, cool. Next slide, please. Here are just a few quotes from our youth from Madera and Central Valley about their experience with wildlife. Youth have had the opportunities to work with city council, other stakeholders in Madera to push forward. All that I won't read the quotes out to you, but they're there for you to look at a later time as well. Next slide, please. Cool. I'll pass this slide over to Yvette.
Yeah, so to give a little bit more insight on the inner workings of the commission itself, we have our young people go through an application process very similar to the way they would via college. So we have them do an online application form that has 3 essays. And we also go through an interview process with the council member and ourselves. So we could do a really nice handoff with the young people and the council members so they feel comfortable in the space. And then we go through a swearing in ceremony at city council. For the youth commission itself and how the young people kind of experience the program, we just ask that they are committed to 10 hours per month. Although we don't always use 10 hours per month for our meetings or for our trainings, it's a commitment that we have the young people make. So that way when we do events or if they have big ideas, we definitely have the time for that. And we also have regular meetings and trainings. So part of our mission here at YLI is not to just to hold the space for the commission to exist, but also to train them to make sure that they feel comfortable and feel empowered to be in a city council space and run their own city council meetings. So in the very beginning of our embarking of our youth, we go through youth and partnerships training, we go through the program cycle, kind of what John, you showed earlier. And we kind of, our hope is to get them to the point where they're hosting their meetings on their own with just the adult ally as a support. And so we can move on to the next slide to show a little bit about some of the work that they've done. So our previous youth commission was very passionate about communication between citizens of the city and the city itself. And so they came up with this idea of coming up with a resource and activity book that could be spread through the community. This project was done entirely on Zoom during the pandemic. So young people were going to school online. We were functioning our program online. And this was their dream project that they wanted to do. So in the book, it has COVID-19 awareness, social distancing tips, local highlights, news highlights, activity pages, recipe pages, DIY pages, small business shout outs, school shout outs, senior encouragement, and a community needs assessment. We also include that community needs assessment as a way to gather some data from the community for future projects. This project here is available via that link tree that's in the slide. This project has also been carried on to other youth programs. So there's multiple iterations of this book, but this idea originated from the original youth commission that we had. And so, yeah, so that was just some of the work that we've done. And then I'll toss it over to Johnny for our last slide.
Great. Our last, I kind of wrap it up on the youth commission portion of it is how important is that the role of a parent, guardian, and adult ally. For example, when we have a full cohort of youth commission, we have a meeting with their parents and guardians as well. We know that getting to and from meetings could be an issue. We want their families get to know wildlife faces, their audience faces as well, and know that we are in this together as a team to support the young person in this process of becoming a youth commissioner. We also engage city council members as well, city staff, get them trained with the wildlife core trainings. Like YAP, which is Youth and Adult Partnerships, you go over like what are some good SOPs, standards, and practices to hold for themselves as stakeholders in their community. While that does this through our TCS department, our Training and Services department, which has trained different orgs, different city staff across the whole state as well, and how to better engage with young people in very genuine ways. And like I say, one last thing, I think that the main thing you want to focus here is how are you connecting with your youth? You know, you want to push for a policy, you want to push forward, or have youth push for a policy, is finding ways to authentically and meaningfully engage with them. You know, the authenticity and the genuineness of your program really relies upon how you're able to relate with them and build safety for them. So with that, I'll pass back over to Taylor. Thank you all for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Johnny. Thank you so much, Yvette. We really appreciate the chance to learn a little bit more about the Madera Youth Commission. And I'm seeing a couple Q&A questions rolling in already, so we'll add those to our list for the end of the webinar. So thank you. We will now move on over to Rosie Ramos Gomez. She is going to chat with us a bit about the SACOG Youth Leadership Academy. And I'll kick it over to you, Rosie, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Hi, everyone. As Taylor mentioned, my name is Rosie Ramos Gomez. I'm with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG, as I will refer to it. We are a metropolitan planning organization, or MPO, that serves the 6-county greater Sacramento area. That includes the counties of El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba. And we primarily are a transportation and land use planning organization. And so our diving into youth program was definitely a little bit different, but I'm happy that we get to do it. If you can go to the next slide, Taylor. So I have like this picture here, a couple of pictures here, because on the left you see this is an old board picture. You know, our responsibility as a 6-county planning agency, we have a 31-member board. Everyone in the county and their cities within has one elected official that sits on our board, comes together once a month, makes policy and planning decisions. And so when we had an elected official that was a chair at the time, his name is Jay Chenier, when he was he's a very big youth advocate, and so he's wanted to have something around youth for our agency. And so we were at first very concerned and didn't feel like there was a lot of board members that said, why are we doing this? Let's stick to our goals, our planning agency. Why would we go into youth advocacy? Why would we bring in youth? And so it was definitely a challenge to get, you know, a setting like the one on the left to then finally getting a group of students engaged and participating. So definitely was a challenge at first because our board just didn't have an interest in it. Staff was definitely a little bit scared as to what we were going to do, right? I do not have a youth planning or a youth advocate background. And so I was just nervous about it. But our chair was very diligent and was very passionate about it. He found private money to bring in that resource for us. He convinced the rest of the board. We were tasked with this, and I say we, there was myself, a couple other staff, and then eventually we were also partnered up with another organization. If you could next slide, please. That was what made it a little bit easier. In fact, I actually got up to work with Taylor. She was the person on the pro youth and family side, which is what ended up being a really huge partnership for us. So again, we're tasked with this idea of figure out how to bring in youth into the work that SACOG does as a planning agency, and we'll go from there. And so we partnered with a nonprofit that did youth focused work. And so that was really helpful for us because we brought in someone that had expertise. And so our program is very much focused on sharing what SACOG does, what is the planning world, with the intent of getting students across the region to know what we do, hopefully influence them to become public servants, whether it's at the regional level, city level, county, or just be more engaged citizens. And so we worked together to create a curriculum. Taylor did an amazing job, which we still use a lot of that today. Our model basically was our nonprofit partner held the financial side of things. They hired on a full-time coordinator, but that coordinator was housed at SACOG, and we were able to put together a curriculum. Next slide, please. That's our council member, Jay Shanier, and at our first big event that we had, I believe. Actually, this might be the second one. But it was definitely something that was really exciting once we got it going, and once we figured out that actually there is a lot that we have to offer, and there's a lot that we can gain from having students participate in the world of SACOG. We figured out the curriculum that would really focus again on what is planning, how do you become a more civically engaged leader, what are the processes that exist in our communities. I think coming from myself, a youth from a disinvested community, I didn't know what planning was. I was not aware of it. I didn't know how decisions were made until I got to college. And so that sort of was a perspective. I was like, okay, so now we have a chance to actually connect with a lot of youth and share what we're doing as a planning agency. And that actually got me more excited about doing it. And again, once we got that help from the nonprofit side, we built out that curriculum that really emphasized understanding the systems that we live in and how they affect our built environment. And so that's really the bread and butter of what YLA has been and continues to be, and what we want to continue to evolve into it. If you can go to the next slide, please. Here, there's just a couple of pictures from the different sessions we did our first year. We focused on civic advocacy. We took a field trip to our airport and talked about the ties to economic development and land use. We also did a field trip to a tomato processing plant in the city of Davis, because there's a link to agriculture and transportation and the movement of food and goods. We did conversations across the region. That was a whole another piece of it, is that we wanted to showcase the region to our students. We're a 6-county region and a very diverse region in a lot of different ways. We have the urban core in the Sacramento area, but then you start getting out to the other counties, and we're very rural communities live. And so we wanted to really highlight that we have a lot of agriculture that happens here that feeds the world. And so we wanted to make sure that we were showcasing and giving students opportunity to know the region that they were a part of. The other thing I want to add to a big value for the YLA program was that we wanted to reach out to students that were not already super plugged into the extracurriculars. That was another piece that the nonprofit partner really helped us with, was because, again, we're a planning agency. We don't have relationships with the school districts. We don't have relationships with folks that are already doing youth advocacy. And so we're really able to tap into those networks and reach out to our disinvested communities. And we have GIS tools, and so we were able to create a map of what schools we wanted to target versus or putting them into our environmental justice areas communities that we had, and then Title I schools. And so really focusing on doing targeted outreach to teachers, to the principals, asking our board members to help with community outreach, so that each community was represented, because that was also something that's important, that we want to have the group be diverse geographically. So in total, we have 28 different cities and counties that we work with. And so the goal is always to have at least one from each one. Doesn't always happen, but we try. If we can skip to the next one, please. Of course, a lot changed in 2020. We had to go virtual, and that was definitely a challenge, but a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because we were able to save a lot of the original funding that we had. Again, the original funding was all private dollars that our elected official fundraised for us, and that was able to sustain the program for basically 3 years until we transitioned to now fully owning the program. Next slide, please. This was our first year that we went to basically hosting everything in-house. We no longer have that partnership with our Pro Youth and Families partner that we had in the beginning, but they set us up really well, and so we've now brought it on to basically fund it and run it all entirely ourselves, which has been really challenging, but also really cool too, as we get to bring in more staff to help us do that. So yeah, that's a little bit about the program. I think I have one more slide. Okay, yeah, so one more slide, sorry. Yeah, and so this year was our 5th year that we did it. We are now about 200 students strong across the region, and we're celebrating our 5 years, and that's really exciting for us. And I'm happy to talk about more in the questions, but one of the next things we want to do is how do we create a better pipeline for these students to continue to work with us in terms of internships, future career opportunities. But yeah, that's a little background on our program, and I'm happy to chat more in the Q&A section.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rosie. Really appreciate your insights there. And as we had with our last presenter, we're getting some great follow-up questions. And so we'll dive into that a little bit more after our next 2 presenters. So thank you. Let's see, moving on here over to the East Bay Municipal Utility District's Youth Career Development Programs. We have Kay Tate joining us. As I mentioned, Kay is a Senior Human Resources Analyst over at East Bay MUD. So Kay, if you are ready, I will kick it over to you.
Thanks, Taylor. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So when people think of government and civic duty, folks do not immediately think of critical resources, I think, such as water and public sector agencies. In all honesty, when I go to classrooms to talk about our youth programs about East Bay MUD, I often start by asking, and this is whether they're in elementary, middle school, or high school, sometimes even college, do you know where your water comes from? Right? First question I ask, and then crickets. Do you know what happens to the water after you flush the toilet? Even more crickets, right? As a public sector agency, we provide internship opportunities, which to me essentially serves the purpose of a call to action, almost, to ensure that that there's involvement in the community and the youth, from the youth, stewardship as it relates to preserving and maintaining natural resources, which for us it's water, and being productive and engaged member of our society, which is what civic duty is. Next slide, please. For the few minutes that I have today with you, I will share East Bay MUD's mission and values and provide really an overview. There's so much details that go into these programs that we have, but I will do my best to provide an overview of East Bay MUD service in general, our internship programming models, and purpose it serves. Next slide, please. So sorry about that. I see that there's some language there about the font and text, but anyway, this is actually Briones Reservoir. It is one of our watershed areas. So the mission and values of the district, East Bay MUD, it's our mission is to manage the natural resources with which the district is entrusted while providing reliable, high quality water and wastewater services at fair and reasonable rates for the people of the East Bay, and to preserve and protect the environment for future generations. So this has been our guiding mission since 100 years ago. We actually turned 100 years young on Monday, May 22nd, and very proud of that. So this is really, again, the mission, and below, actually on this slide, you will see the 4 values we internally in our district abide by, which is stewardship, integrity, respect, and teamwork. Next slide, please. So this is our service area, just to really go through this real quick. Our water system serves 1.4 million people who live in Alameda, Contra Costa counties, as far north as Crockett, as far down south as Hayward, parts of Hayward actually. And then, hugging if you're driving through 80, in addition to the water, we also have a wastewater system that serves approximately 740,000 people in Alameda and Contra Costa counties along the Bay Shore, the East Bay. Like I said, if you drive down 80, more likely than not, you'll hit all these cities that you see on this map here. And so that's our service area. Go ahead, next slide, please, Taylor. So I wanted to explain a little bit. When I began working for East Bay Mud in 2003, I worked on the administration of an already existing program that was referred to as the CIP, which is short for Career Intern Program. It was a program that was in-house, that was established in 1998 and ran through 2015, and was specifically designed to provide a paid internship opportunity to promising diverse students with an interest and or aptitude in math and engineering from underfunded schools within our local community. So if you were selected for this internship, you basically got the golden ticket. You know, you had an after school job in high school as juniors and seniors in high school. That's when we started. That's the candidates we sought for. And we paid above minimum wage. And during school, so you could go after school. And then you also had a guaranteed summer job. And they worked, you know, as many hours as they can. And it continued on. If you were selected, you competed for the next phase of it. For the first 2 years of college, you don't even have to declare that you wanted to have earn an engineering degree. Just the first 2 years, again, candidates, interns in this program worked the summer and full-time during summer and full-time during the holidays as well, when they were coming back from college if they were out of state. And again, really highly paid internship opportunity. And then if you are an intern with us and you finished your degree successfully and graduated with an engineering degree and decided, you know, if they were interested, and most of them were, you had a guaranteed job as a junior engineer at East Bay Mud for 2 years. So that's why I said it was a golden ticket. I mean, basically, you know, everyone that was successful, that finished, they had a job since high school, and guess what the outcomes are? It was amazing. A lot of the people that graduated and completed the program are still with East Bay Mud. In fact, a lot of them, they're not even hitting the classic retirement age of 54, but they're younger, but they already have 20-something years of service because of them starting as a 15-year-old at East Bay Mud, essentially. So it also, you know, the program outcome as well, it helped increase the interest into water and wastewater careers. It helped diversify our engineering workforce, based on gender and race. At the time in the 90s, it was a lot of, basically the demographic for engineers were typically white males, and we got the diversity from our community, which is again amazing. In short, it was successful, but it cost a lot with this model. And when the drought happened and we're increasing rates, we definitely did not feel it was fiscally responsible to do this model. So we shifted gears over the years. Next slide, please. So this slide actually shows one of the many career pathways that we have. These are available online. I will make sure that folks know how to find it. But in 2009, basically, East Bay Mud participated in a year-long Water Resource Foundation project, which called for sort of like this regional response and the formation of Baywork, which is actually a consortium of water and wastewater utilities in the Bay Area. We're a signatory to this date. East Bay Mud and other water and wastewater agencies recognized over 10 years ago that operational reliability of water and wastewater utilities depends on both having sufficient staff in mission critical jobs and preparing that staff to do the technical work essential for public health and safety. In prior decades, East Bay Mud's workforce were coming from former military personnel and people with strong trades and operations background. But if you recall, around that time, the .com and computer programming career pathways became the trend, and not a lot of people were going into the jobs that we needed. And these are good paying trades and operator jobs, aside from, again, we also hire civil engineers and mechanical engineers and such. Essentially, we knew even ages ago, or nearly 14 years ago, that we needed to prepare the community. And as an organization, we had to pivot and really focus on workforce development. Next slide, please, Taylor. Okay. So This is a little busy slide, I'm sorry, and there's so much more that goes into this, but I needed to kind of try to succinctly explain. This is the current program model that we are using. So on the left side, under the heading of Peralta College's Foundation, or actually it could be any other organization, starting with that blue pathway, we essentially serve as intern placements for targeted career pathways. And we depend on the outreach efforts of our youth and community referrals and community business organizations such as Lao Family, Rising Sun, Cypress Mandela, College Track Oakland and West Contra Costa Unified School District, among others, to basically refer the youth to our internship placements. Now, when they are in this first layer, basically of this career or this intern training model, they're not East Bay Mud employees. So Peralta College Foundation serves as the employer on record. They take care of the insurance. We basically award Peralta College Foundation monies and that go towards the stipend payment to the interns. They verify the required training. They pay, they do this with an administrative fee, obviously. So that's pretty much what Peralta, how Peralta functions. But again, these are referrals to these different intern opportunities within East Bay Mud. The second, or the green, I believe it's like a blue or blue-green pathway, intern pathway, are the part-time or limited term, we call it, paid internship. Again, these are opportunities, and at this stage, they are actually East Bay Mud employees. So I do want to mention that it does require my office to, our office to convince our departments to actually forego hiring up journey level sometimes. And, for this kind of position, as a lot of the, you folks that are in the call, the public sector agencies, we don't just hire and fill a job. We have a merit-based civil service system. So the limited term and temporary positions is what we utilize so that the folks from the communities that worked as interns can then be more competitive after their exposure to East Bay Mud and going through a significant number of weeks, 12-week training with us, in the hopes of the last, I guess, piece of this pathway, which is the entry-level jobs, which also is, again, we need to coordinate with HR, the opening of the actual permanent jobs, and so that as we're going through and planning this model out, it's really like a 2-year, 4-year cycle, and in hopes of getting them at this entry-level phase. But this is not this is just the beginning, actually, right? So if you go back to the previous slide, Taylor, what happens is we get them finally to that very bottom part of this career pathway, and sky's the limit. There's, once we have them as employees, we have our tuition reimbursement program, we have in-house training, and then they could go and move on all the way up to superintendent. So this is really, again, a career pathway model. Next slide, please.
And Kay, I just wanted to let you know, I am going to have to ask you to wrap up your remarks.
Yes.
I'm happy to show the video now if you'd prefer.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect. And this is really what the model that I wanted to show, and the purpose it serves is really to diversify and prepare our workforce. But yes, please. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, sorry about that. I'll advance to our video now, and we'll share a little. Would you like to preface this video at all, Kay?
Oh, yeah. So this is just kind of a video of the 2019 summer youth program we had. 2020, we switched to a virtual model or partial model. And so this is just a nice video of that. It's less than a minute. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kay. And just popping up the final slide here with contact info if folks have any additional follow-ups here that we may not get to during the Q&A portion. Really appreciate your remarks, Kay. All right. Let's move on over to our final presentation. I will welcome Hannah Moore, who is a Youth Services Program Manager. Hannah, I will turn it over to you when you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. I feel really honored to be on this panel and just learning from all of you. So again, my name is Hannah. My pronouns are she, her, hers, or they. And I am the Youth Services Program Manager in the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination in Alameda County's Healthcare Services Agency, and have had the opportunity over the last several years to build out our countywide Youth Advisory Board. Next slide. So today I'm going to just touch briefly the origin story of our Youth Advisory Board, current status, what's been happening. I may not get to all of it because a lot of things are happening, and then thinking about what's next. Next slide. Great. So I think origin stories are extremely important, right? Nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything happens in a context. So understanding why we even decided to create and have a youth advisory board in Alameda County is really important. And so in 2017, the ICPC, Interagency Children's Policy Council, which is a council in Alameda County's governance structure, held a forum on TAY, transitional age youth, experiencing homelessness. They identified that homelessness was starting to look a lot different in our county, and that young people, specifically youth, were experiencing homelessness at very higher rates than ever before. And so the group of people at that forum, which was made up of county agency staff, youth with lived experience of homelessness, decided that they wanted to apply for what's called YHDP, the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. It's a grant through our federal government, HUD. And so they applied in 2018 for this funding to essentially build out a youth response and identify projects and goals to really prevent and end youth homelessness. And the county was not awarded that grant in 2018. And that's because there was no youth advisory board, a board of young people with lived experience and expertise of housing insecurity and homelessness. And so in 2019, the Ending Youth Homelessness Collaborative, which is a group of youth with lived experience of housing insecurity, agency, city staff, researchers, our local universities, University of California, Berkeley, service providers, our shelter staff, also our youth serving organizations, started to come together and really think about how to intentionally build out a YAB, support a YAB coming into our county so that we can support young people in driving the work and getting funding necessary to address this huge issue. So then in 2020, I used to work for it was an initiative called All In Alameda County. It was an initiative through one of our former supervisors, Supervisor Chan's office. And so All In was able to, former colleague of mine was able to identify private funding through Blue Shield of California to support the funding and the build out of a youth advisory board. And like big shout out to Blue Shield of California, because really without that funding, we wouldn't probably not have a YAB, right? So it really took the private funding and money to get it started. And so from 2020 is when I moved into the role to start really building out a youth advisory board as youth services program coordinator in that time of my life. And we worked in partnership with Covenant House of California, because as a county entity, it's extremely hard to pay anyone that's not a county employee. So partnerships with our nonprofits and private sector is huge. And so started, recruiting with support from Covenant House and Covenant House youth residents and other housing providers. and then supported the YAB in applying for the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grant in 2021 in partnership with our healthcare services agency, our social services agency, and our community development agency. And in 2021, we were awarded $6.7 million from the Housing Urban Development Department in our federal government to build out a plan, a coordinated community plan that really addresses specific goals and projects to be funded with that money that will work to prevent and end youth homelessness in our county. Next slide. And so with that, the youth on the YAB we started coming together very intentionally about really building out what the YAB is in terms of mission, vision, bylaws, membership, voting. And this is the vision and the mission of the YAB, and this is their lovely logo that they created. So the vision, we envision an inclusive world where young people of all backgrounds and identities thrive through equity and generosity, where all youth are affirmed as their authentic selves in community. And the mission, the Youth Advisory Board, or YAB, seeks to encourage and uplift youth representation to identify barriers and increase housing stability. We strive to support self-sufficiency by building an equitable community using transparent means. Next slide, please. Awesome. So like I said, the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grant was really a huge win for the YAB and really just for Alameda County in terms of addressing youth homelessness and really thinking together with different systems and partners about what we can do to make youth homelessness brief, one time, and non-reoccurring. And so when we got the grant, it was, oops, sorry about that. There's different processes. Well, in order actually before to get the grant, the Youth Advisory Board and myself, we led focus groups with youth experiencing homelessness. They had a grant writing workshop where they wrote narratives to submit the grant. So it was a lot of work on the part of the young folks. And so it was really exciting to receive the award. And again, so partnerships was a huge piece of it, right? We held focus groups at one at Covenant House at one of our transitional housing shelters, and then also REACH, which is a youth center in our unincorporated area, and then held our grant writing workshop at one of our county libraries in Castro Valley. And so it really was like pulling everyone in, partnerships, really make it happen, right? We know teamwork makes the dream work. So the first phase of YHDP was building out our coordinated community plan. And so we held community conversations that were led and facilitated by our YAB members with different subpopulations of youth experiencing homelessness. I'm gonna keep going. We had, okay, I'll say collaboration, again, is a huge part. I share this all the time in our Ending Youth Homelessness Collaborative. We can only be a force together. We can only be together with trust. We can only trust if we're authentic with each other. And we can only be authentic if we admit we don't know our way out of this. Let this be a verbal toast to more questions, more collaborative ideation, more doubt, more experimentation, more releasing that which isn't working, more listening to unlikely voices of leadership, more caring and connecting with others, with each other in ways that will prepare us for whatever is coming. Next slide. Again, this is more of that mostly, but, and I've heard other people speak to this, but really I think, youth development, youth engagement, youth work, being in relation with young people and is really about being authentic, right? And meeting young people where they are and understanding that relationship, experience, identity is a huge part of doing anything. And so this is just kind of like a concept around doing transformative work, doing systems work. There's a structure, pattern, process, right? There's like all the admin work I have to do in terms of board letters and grant agreements and exhibits and all of those things. And then also the relational piece and bringing in young people to understand those processes. Next slide. So logistically, again, let's pay our youth, duh, right? That's it's a no-brainer, and it's not the easiest thing. So funding, again, we had private funding initially, which was a godsend, because unfortunately, grants like YHCP from our federal friends do not fund youth advisory boards, right? And so really thinking, how are we going to fund this? And so we looked at our state funding, our HAP funding, our housing assistance program, to there's a specific youth set aside, just really getting creative as like someone who's not a fund developer, but thinking about all the ways to do that. And then also logistically paying, right? Like if you're not a county employee, it's very hard to be paid by the county. So working with our nonprofit partners to contract and make sure that young people are getting paid. And then also thinking about forms of payment, right? Not all youth can have bank accounts, can cash checks, thinking about different creative ways to make sure young people are paid for their time and energy. Also understanding access and engagement. Like, what does that mean? Especially like all this work started in the pandemic. So it's very tricky, like understanding technology, who has access, right? We created a youth YAB technology library, and with our planning grant funds from YHCP, we're able to purchase 10 iPads. And so, and space, like we didn't really have space, like, right? And then I remember really initially, oh, my time is about to be up, but initially when we were starting doing recruitment, it was the pandemic, and then we had all of our, so we were like, okay, we'll pivot, we'll go outside, we'll be on the roof, and then we had our fires, no one could breathe from smoke. So really thinking creatively about how to engage. Next slide, and I think I'm up, so. Yeah, what's next? We're continuing to do a lot of work in the county with the Youth Advisory Board leading all of that work. They're leading our continuous quality improvement of our projects funded by YHCP, which is a joint component housing project and a peer navigation project. They're part of the Huddle, which is a case conferencing specific to youth housing providers, really supporting our youth who are getting matched through our coordinated entry system to housing resources, making sure they're getting into those housing resources and sustaining those housing resources. And our continuum of care, our COC, really making sure young people are part of that work and in those spaces to make decisions. And my time is up, so perfect. Thank you. And you can reach out, and I'm happy to answer any more questions in the Q&A now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hannah. We really appreciate you sharing a little bit more about the advisory board and what's coming next, because that is a fantastic transition to our panel Q&A and discussion. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll ask that our panelists join us on video if you are able now. Perfect. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Awesome. So I think we will get started with the first question that Hannah set us up so perfectly for, which is what is coming next for your programs, especially as we think about this kind of post-pandemic space, if you will. Obviously, there's been a lot of hybrid modifications, different ways that we engage with youth. I'm curious if y'all could share kind of a brief idea of what's coming next for your programs. If anyone would like to unmute and get us started, you're welcome to do so.
Happy to go. I think I said I would talk a little bit more about what we want to do next. So this is a great question. I think the part that's next for us is to really figure out how we integrate the work that is happening with the youth into the work that we're doing. I think we're doing a good job at like sharing information. We have an alumni network that's over 200. We're sharing information. I know lots of students have gone opportunities, have gone onto other youth commissions, have participated in other groups, but I'm really interested in how do we harness all that creative energy that they have, and the input and the feedback that they have is so important. How do we bring it back into the work that we're doing? Obviously that means us changing some of the way that we do our work and changing how we think about our work, but we're talking about planning, right? We're talking about future planning. We're long range transportation planners, so we're planning the futures of these students. So that's where we're trying to figure out how do we do a better job at that. We are in the works of creating a internship program this summer, so hoping that the YLA program is a pipeline into that, but still trying to figure out that next piece. And so that's a lot of internal stuff, but I think the internship piece is the first component of that. And then of course, maybe we can have, additional opportunities for them once they're done in actual employment. But that's where we're thinking right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Rosie. Anybody else on the line would like to share? I know, Hannah, we kind of rushed you at the end. If there's anything else you wanted to share as far as next steps for YAB, anybody feel free.
Yeah, thank you. So I said the continuum of care and also COC. This is very jargony, so I'm like, let me, if the continuum of care is this kind of the space and geographical region, right? That as a group of folks that hopefully predominantly are folks with lived experience of housing insecurity and homelessness, as well as people working in these systems, who make decisions around federal funding that comes down, as well as state funding, right? For projects, programs, anything housing, homeless related. And so our COC in Alameda County has been going through a governance restructure for about the last year and a half. And the YAB and myself proposed integrating a youth committee into the governance charter last fall. And it was approved by the leadership board of our COC. And so we're currently, the nominations committee is currently recruiting for applicants. And so we really want the youth committee to be a third of youth with lived experience of homelessness and housing insecurity, and then service providers that support our youth, as well as folks in education and social services agency in our juvenile justice system. And so that everyone is talking together and really thinking together about best practices. And we really want youth across the COC, not just in the youth committee, but in different committees as well. And we're continuing to think about, like I know Rosie spoke to alumni, an alumni group. We're thinking about what could that look like. A lot of our youth on the YAB have started to be connected into different spaces through the YAB work. So like there's a guaranteed income project piloting through the city of Oakland, and so they've kind of gotten to that space. And so just getting into different work that's connected to this and really supporting them in making those transitions.
Cool, we can go next. Yvette, feel free to jump in whenever you want. Next, that's for the Mayor Youth Commission right now. We're actually relaunching our commission. We had a year of recruitment recently in 2022. We'll be going to City Council June 21st, I believe. City Council meets there the first and third Wednesday of the month to get our youth commissioners sworn in as official commissioners. Right now I'm meeting with them weekly and like prep them for that work. Since they're not an official commission yet, I'm able to meet with them beforehand and get some of that foundational training done before they meet as an actual commission where they will have to abide by the Brown Act, things that the Robert's Rules of Orders, that kind of stuff like that, have a public as well. So that's where we're at right now with the Youth Commission.
Thank you so much for that update on the Youth Commission. And Kay, I just wanted to give you a moment in case you did want to share anything about what's coming up next for internships and anything at East Bay Mud.
Yeah, we have a busy time ahead of us. We already started recruiting. We usually do this in the fall of the previous year, right? And leading up to January, February, winter of the actual year of the summer internship program. We have our ranger interns, our IT interns, and I guess what I personally would like is to have more of a social media presence for East Bay Mud. We basically just for the 100-year anniversary now we have a social media, our Instagram for East Bay Mud Water _water. But before then, we really relied on our partners and our interns to even be the one to blast. Like, I'm an intern right now at East Bay Mud. And that's how, again, we rely on them, but also just their experience at East Bay Mud. And I'm not just doing filing in the stockroom, because they're really being, they're really immersed in there. We give them tours. They get to know all the different parts of the organization. And we're doing the same. We're modeling, we're continuing in that model. It's been successful for us. But yeah, I think I can only imagine if we had a social media presence, how much more reach we would have. And I did see a question on the chat. We do ensure, we try to ensure equity and diversity for minority youth within our community. All the school districts, we blast it, and we get help from, again, our CBOs and Rising Sun agencies such as that prepare the youth to find out about East Bay Mud internship. So we're continuing with that model this year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Kay. And that's a really great segue, talking about engagement, social media. You know, we've gotten a lot of questions from our audience before the webinar and during around how to effectively not only engage youth via social media when we're thinking about recruitment for programs, but also being mindful of any technology limitations that folks might have in this kind of hybrid environment. The other kind of piece to this, and I think Kay got us started talking about it, is how do agencies with different levels of social media presence kind of navigate providing youth programs, understanding that young folks are really plugged into social media, maybe more so than any government agency has ever really thought of. So to kind of pull that into one question, I'm curious if y'all might be able to speak to some of the best practices for engaging with young folks and also local governments related to social media and youth programming, any way that that question applies to you.
I can start. I think letting young folks connect with their young folks, right? Like supporting one of our projects that we're funding through YHGP is a peer navigation project. And so we've contracted with an organization that is has been doing youth development and organizing for a long time. And so they're hiring peer navigators, right? So young people between the ages of 18 and 28 who have had lived experience with housing insecurity and homelessness. And they're learning our HMIS, our homeless management information system, right? I saw a question around managing data collection. They're also like getting trained on our coordinated entry system, which is a process to get connected to housing resources. And they are out there, they're creating their social media flyers with their QR codes and, scanning and going out and sharing it with like our McKinney-Vento liaisons who are in our school districts, supporting our minors who are experiencing homelessness, right? So really, like calling in the expertise of the youth, right? And making sure that they know that we trust them and that we support them, and understanding what does that mean and look like for them to do what they know is best.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hannah. I'm curious if there are any social media or kind of hybrid technology best practices that have worked for any of our other panelists, or maybe even some, pitfalls to avoid. Anything you might want to share.
I think the one thing I want to share is about like if organizations don't have social media or feel like reluctant towards them, like just to say that the young people are very comfortable with it, even though us adults might not be used to it or something new. They've grown and lived a life without, or with technology, and they don't know what it is to be without it. And also from the youth perspective, it gives a little sense of legitimacy or like a little sense of safety when they could jump on Instagram and see a bunch of other young people who've been through the program. They could check on their Instagrams and look at their things. And it's a great way to connect young people to partners. And so a lot of the times we want young people to be a part of our programs, but maybe they don't fit to our programs. And it's a good way to help others recruit and build a sense of community. And also for parents too, it's makes more sense when a young person brings a slew of information that's not just a website to an adult and say like, look, this is what I want to do. And it gives that sense of safety and legitimacy to the org that may not be there without it from the youth's perspective.
Yeah, if I can one more thing, I think also as well, echoing with both Yvette and Hannah shared already, I think to point like as the risk and to give youth the ownership of the social media account. I think as well, like having the staff member having like the sole ownership as well. That way, in case you can move out, do different program and all that, that would like the ownership of that social media account stays within that specific org. And again, kind of echoing again, like having youth tap into their own expertise and being a co-owner. They are the experts right now. I will say for sure, I'm not expert in social media at all. And so I lean heavily upon you to support in those ways.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing those thoughts. And I think our panel here has been picking up on some of the questions coming through the Q&A and chat. So pivoting a little bit, because we've seen quite a few questions come in around equity, ensuring that our youth programming is not only delivered with an equitable lens, but also just really thinking about what are the ways that we engage youth in this kind of public policy process, whether it's through advisory boards or on youth commissions or via internship programs. And we received a question that I think was really a way to kind of summarize this, which is, how do we structure youth engagement in an equitable way that doesn't necessarily influence youth's voice? So it's not that we're necessarily like sharing one specific viewpoint, we're really encouraging them to think about and develop their own voice. I'm curious if y'all might have any insight on how your programs do that.
I can jump in. I think for YLA, so as an agency, we are a facts and data driven agency, right? We're running models, we're trying to figure out what is like the forecasting of future population growth and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that carries into the YLA program in that we're just trying to deliver as much neutral facts as we can. Now I say as much as we can because at the same time, like, I'm the facilitator, and so I have a perspective. I try to like not enforce my own perspective, but like also want to share like some of the realities, right? I think I saw in the other questions too, like we talk about environmental justice and equity issues and not trying to frame it as a like one side is wrong, one side is correct, but just facts, right? Like we have redlining, that is a real thing that has happened. And so we talk about it. We have environmental justice areas that we navigate with. That's a real thing. That's data. We talk about it. So I think it's really trying to engage students and sharing that these are the processes, these are the facts, these are how decisions are made. Hopefully we're just giving you the tools to navigate those, and then you can go and advocate for whatever it is that you want to advocate for. Yeah, so I don't know if that exactly answers the question, but we try to like kind of set it up in that way.
I'll say, so the YAB meets weekly. They meet every week on Thursday afternoons. And I would say a huge piece for me personally, and just in this work, again, we all talked about like, we're doing systems change, movement, policy, but also like we're also humanity, right? Humanity is a thing, and we're like in relation with other human beings, no matter what age they are. And so really just like the youth development piece and the just like, self-reflection piece of like, what does it mean to be, who am I? What does it mean to be in my community? What does it mean to be in this world, right? And so the YAB, in addition to having like workshops around like county budgeting and like county structure, there's also like on 420 they did an adaptogens workshop and had someone come in and talk about plant medicine and how to manage stress with plant medicine, right? And doing like writing workshops and creative writing workshops and telling your story in a way that feels safe and powerful, right? So really understanding like who we are as human beings in this work, I think is a huge part that anyone doing youth work, especially someone doing like youth work in a civic engagement or in a government structure or context, has to be able to kind of be a chameleon or be like in these kind of different spaces where it's like, I have to know and learn and translate the admin bureaucratic piece, and also like hold young people where they are and support them in their growth and development.
Thank you so much for sharing, Hannah. Really appreciate that. And Kay, I just want to give you a chance too, if there's anything specific related to youth voice or kind of developing their professional presence in the context of your internships, feel free to share.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think we lead by example. I know I'm kind of tooting my own horn here, but at East Bay Mud, we have a lot of affinity groups. In fact, one of our earlier affinity groups, they celebrated their 23rd year anniversary. That's how long they've been in existence. I think it's the Asian Pacific Employee Association. We have Black Employees Network. We have our Pride. We have Hispanic Latinx group, and by basically just knowing that here's an organization, here's an agency that wants, you know, employees to come their full selves, you know, to come in and we celebrate our diversity. We're committed as an organization through our DEISP. I think that's how, in a way, you know, in a way we are modeling that, hey, you know, here's your voice, you're valid, we need you, we need your innovation, we need your creativity, we want you. And we value them when, you know, when they're in the group and they really are there working alongside engineers. And I forgot to mention that another purpose that the internships serve is really, you know, when there's an intern in a department, everyone is better behaved, everyone is more engaged, everyone just takes the time and want to really mentor and train the youth that's around them. So the adult employees are like, just seems better. And then they're better leaders as well. So, and it comes full circle. The interns that we had that are now employees, they mentor the next generation, and it's just coming full circle. So that's what I think a way to, I guess, to answer that question. That's how I'd answer that. Thanks, Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Thank you. Well, and that's really helpful. And it's really encouraging to hear that that kind of mentorship cycle continues to keep on giving. That's incredibly important for youth. And we're going to switch gears just a little bit here for our questions that have been coming through about funding, community partnerships, identifying these nonprofit organizations that can maybe support local governments in this work if maybe their capacity is limited. I'm mindful we have a couple folks on the line with, you know, either indirect or direct experience with developing those relationships. And so I'm curious if anyone would be willing to talk a little bit as to how your organization identified community-based org relationships. And if you have any tips for folks who are really looking for some outside support, but they may not know where to start.
I can share a little bit. So as I mentioned, our chair that was the one that really initiated this program, he already had a relationship with the nonprofit that we partnered with. So he was very instrumental in building that bridge because we didn't have it before. But so he created that partnership opportunity for us. He independently fundraised like, I think it was 160,000 to get us kicked off. And so that money, because I think what Hannah mentioned it, like it's really tough to pay non-employees out of government funds. So that's why the private funding was critical. And it was also critical that the nonprofit be the overseeing fiscal agent, because they were easily able to bring on a staff person. They were easily able to purchase the gift cards. They could buy things just so much more easily. So we had a relationship broker, and then I think I saw really quickly that was the original funding. As I mentioned, the pandemic saved us a lot of money. It cost us other things, but saved us money. And now that we don't have the official partnership with the nonprofit, we have it in-house, and so we're not counting the staff costs around that. But for the cost of running the program now, we're definitely well under like $12,000 of running it. So at this time, it's like reduced significantly the amount of cost because it just takes less staff time. We already have it kind of on lock, and so we're just kind of cycling through. So that's just like a little bit of the fiscal impacts. But private dollars are still key, and we still have separate private funding for this project, which makes it so much more easier, even though it's still hard because now it's in-house, but that is important.
Thank you, Rosie. And I'm curious, not to put Johnny or Yvette on the spot, but since you all kind of serve in that nonprofit support capacity, could you maybe talk a little bit about the relationship building with the city of Madera, if you have any kind of do's or don'ts from your experience for organizations who might want to reach out to a nonprofit like you?
Yeah, definitely. I can echo what Rosie was saying about how they launched the program with YLA, different to YLI. And so we launched in Madera in 2017 through our previous director. She had a connection with United Way, Madera, Fresno counties. And then they met with Superintendent Todd Lyle of Madera Unified School District, and together made this project alongside City of Madera to engage young people in the city of Madera in very genuine and authentic ways. And from that kind of like dream station collab thing, we launched the Youth Commission, and also we have classes on site at both Madera High, all of Madera High, Madera South, and Torres High School. And I would say the best way kind of like go about reaching out to city administrators or city council members, and just go to city council meetings, go there, get to know people, network out, have some cards ready for there. I was very fortunate to kind of like be brought into this process through my previous director and folks in her network. And so I got to kind of like get to know city council that way. And really, I started showing up. Knocking on doors, saying, hey, this is who I am. This is what we're doing. This is Youth Commission in Madera. Having like coffee meetings with city council frequently. During our first year, 2017, 2018, and part of 19, I was meeting with them quite often, either they're at City Hall or I'm inviting them for a quick lunch, or a coffee type of a thing, and then kind of sitting with them, kind of picking their brain and see how best city Madera can support young people within that community. It did push me outside of my normal comfort zone a little bit, but like you have to kind of push yourself through those little barriers every once in a while. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And now I have their sound numbers on my phone. I text them here and there, districts 1 through 6. I had a phone call yesterday afternoon with Steve Montes, District 3. And so I'll just encourage you, just like the more you get out there, the more easier it'll become for you. So.
Absolutely. No, it sounds like building those relationships, continuing to kind of make any sort of, commission and council relationship, continue to build it, continue empowering the youth to build it as well is so important. So thank you for sharing that perspective, Johnny. I do want to give Hannah and Kay a kind of a last chance here if there's anything related to partnership best practices that you've seen out in the field that have worked well, or any things you could kind of impart onto our local government leaders who might want to work with youth.
I can say something. It is challenging sometimes with nonprofit because there's a high turnover of staff. And sometimes you build that relationship with a director or program director or even a case manager, and then they move on. But it's, but it's really all about the actual nonprofit or CBO. And if they have very established relationships within the community, that's really what works for us. Sometimes, like Johnny said, sometimes you just have to hit the ground and just kind of knock and, and ask. And sometimes we find out about our current partners that way. Sometimes we get invited because they host maybe a really great turnout of a job fair. And then that's when we meet. And then from then we go to their actual site. They show us then, the CBOs then show us what programming they have, what resources they have, and then how we can help each other and complement each other. But yeah, it's there are definitely more effective, I would say, CBOs than others or nonprofits, and but it is, again, because we are again trying to be more fiscally responsible. We do have to be selective of who we work with because it is the customers, it's our ratepayers' money, right? We definitely care for that. So. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just echo Johnny and Kay, like you got to get out there, and now we can, again, more than ever, right? And just like going and visiting. I mean, it's a relationship building, whether it was like in a work context or like a personal, right? You want to like, it takes continued work and it can be challenging, but showing up, going to partner events, not just asking for things, right? It's like relational, transformational. And then, yeah, like Kay said, challenges around staffing, turnover. I think we're seeing that really big right now. Like a lot of our CBOs and why youth serving organizations are struggling to hire. Right. And then that just adds another dimension to the work in general, but also offers opportunity to have conversations about what collaboration can look like and like how we can support as a county agency and entity, right? So just like, yeah, continuing to get out there, have the coffee dates, have the lunch dates, go to events, invite to events, right? Bring the youth with you as much as you can. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. That is such a great note to end on as far as forging connection, building relationships. That's really what youth development and civic engagement is all about. So I want to thank all of our panelists for all of your amazing responses to these questions. As you all can guess by our Q&A and chat, we have only scratched the surface of some of those questions, but I would encourage you all, as I share our concluding slides here, to reach out to our panelists if there are specific questions about programs that you didn't quite get an answer to. I know all of our panelists, I think, have provided an email related to their specific program. So feel free to reach out, or to myself if you need an extra referral. Just to share a couple of resources for folks still on the line, as far as upcoming ILG events, we do offer a public engagement training intensive, and we have just opened registration for that. This isn't necessarily youth specific, but for any local government agencies who might want to learn about the public outreach process and how to better engage their communities, I would encourage you to check out this training that we have coming up in July. And then for our other resources, a little bit more specific to youth development, we have just re-released our Empower Youth Toolkit. This includes a lot of our case studies and best practices for civic engagement and youth development that we've compiled in partnership with our local government partners. So please check that out. We also have a case study here from a program that ILG ran last year that has a great model, I think, for civic engagement across local government agencies. And then lastly, we do have a slightly older resource here, Picture Yourself in Local Government. This curriculum, as I said, is definitely predates the pandemic. It predates quite a few of our more recent, things that have really changed the civic engagement environment, but I think it's still a great baseline for how local governments run. So I hope you can check that out too. And if you have any other questions or need additional referrals, please feel free to contact me. And just to reiterate for folks, recording will be available likely next week since we are going into the long weekend. You should be seeing that and the presentation come in via email as well as posted to our ILG website. And if you haven't already, please feel free to stay connected with us. We have our newsletter and social media. Would love to stay connected with you here at ILG. And I just want to say one more thank you to our panelists for joining us today, as well as all of our audience members for tuning in. We are so grateful you're interested in this content, and we're really happy to provide any other insight as needed. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.